Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today is Vasant Panchami, the celebration of the appearance of Srimati Vishnu Priya Devi, the disappearance of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the appearance of Sri Pundarika Vidyanidhi, the appearance of Raghunandan Thakur, and the appearance of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. There have been many great Vaisnavas in this Kali Yuga. Most of them are not very well known. They're all glorious, but there are some Vaishnavas whose position is so amazing, so exalted that they are particularly remembered. And there are 5 to be celebrated today. So I'll just speak a little about each of them. Even though the names of some devotees are recorded, some of them there's not that much information about them. Others there's much. There are whole books written about them. About Vishnu Priya Devi, Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 20, quoting, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, his wife Vishnu Priya Devi, although only 16 years old, also took the vow of austerity due to her husband's leaving home. Yes, please read it. It's the second paragraph of the purport. She chanted her beads, and after finishing one round, she collected 1 grain of rice. In this way, as many rounds as she chanted, she would receive the same number of rice grains and then cook them and so take prasada. This is called austerity. Even today in India, widows or women whose husbands have taken sannyas follow the principles of austerity, even though they live with their children. So this is within a purport in which the behavior of Queen Archie, the king's wife, King Prithu, how she behaved in great austerity, and describes the ideal behavior of a wife who is taponishta, as you say, who is performing austerity, following her husband's example. So we don't have so much more information about Vishnu Priya Devi. Her marriage with Nimai Pandit is described in some detail in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. There is a whole sampradaya, or rather upper sampradaya, or wrong sampradaya in the Gauriya line, which gives much stress to Sri Vishnu Priya Devi. They are known as Gaura Nagari, Gauranga Nagari, Nadia Nagari, and they present Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the enjoyer of the young women of Nadia, just as Krishna is the enjoyer of the young women of Vraja. And they specially emphasize the position of Vishnu Priya Devi. However, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur especially has pointed out, this is completely against the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came himself in the mood of Radha as the servant of Krishna. The position of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is unique and pivotal within our sampradaya. Pivotal in the sense that we wouldn't be the sampradaya that we are if it hadn't been for him. After the departure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there arose much controversy within the Gauriya Sampradaya as to whether Krishna in Vrindavan should be worshipped according to the paramour system or the marital system. Swakiya Parakiya. That's the whether Krishna is actually married to the gopis or not. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he resolved this, and as a result it's accepted that the highest mode of worship of Krishna is that's already Vrajavadhu Vargena Ya Kalpita, as the even the word Vadhu actually means wives, but in the mode of paramour love. His comments on Shastra are also unique. Unique? Vishesha.
Visheshanga kanipistundi.
Ananya?
Ananya is different.
Is it? Alright. In Telugu it's different. Vishesh is not really the word though.
Yeah, Ananya is Ananya can also be.
Yeah, Ananya is that. I think that's more accurate. Many times he supplies conversations. That means that some verse is given and he gives more conversation to it. Just like, for instance, in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says to Arjuna, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati, declare it, O Arjuna, that my devotee will never be vanquished.
Hello?
Vishwanath adds the conversation that Krishna says that you'd better say it, because if I say it, no one will believe me, because I'm from Mathura and no one trusts people from Mathura. So often he'll provide very humorous background. And humorous in another sense, that it's very much rasamai. The word humor doesn't only mean comical, but it also means with different flavors of feeling. Some Gauriya Vaisnavas, they think that he is Rupa Goswami come again to give more exposition on particularly on the Parakya, the very intimate affairs of Radha and Krishna. So his literary contribution is pivotal in our sampradaya. He wrote many books and various commentaries. So when you have time, you can read all of those. They're mostly in Sanskrit. Many have been translated. Interestingly, he wrote a Sanskrit commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is in Bengali. His role in our sampradaya has been pivotal in another sense, that it was reading his commentary on the Vyavasayatmaka Buddhir Eke Hakurunandana verse that had such an influence on our own Srila Prabhupada. I deliberately said two padas, because the Vyavasayatmika Buddhi comes up twice in Bhagavad Gita. So therein Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that a disciple should make the order of the spiritual master his life and soul. He doesn't desire his own happiness or even his own liberation, whether he lives or whether he dies. He only cares to follow the order of his guru. So that Srila Prabhupada himself described that when he first read that had a very deep effect on him. And it's a point that Srila Prabhupada himself stressed very much, probably more even than previous acharyas. Of course, the principle of following the guru, that's deeply embedded in Vedic culture. Okay. Also, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he composed the Sri Gurvashtaka, which we sing daily, in which he again stresses the same point in another way. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado yasya prasadana gati katopi. If somehow or other one can attain the favor of the Guru, then he will attain the favor of Krishna. And whatever else one may do, if somehow one fails to attain the favor of the Guru, then he's hopeless. He has no hope of attaining the desired goal. Sri Pundarika Vidyanidhi is described quite to some extent in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. I had the privilege of being one of the first Western Vaisnavas, very first, to visit the birthplace of Pundarika Vidyanidhi, which is now in Bangladesh. Actually, I was just thinking yesterday that previously when people thought of India, they thought of what's now Pakistan and Bangladesh, that was part of it. So it's just artificially, it's been amputated from India. Anyway, that birthplace of Pundarik Vidyanidhi is now an ISKCON center. That is in the Chattogram area of what is now Bangladesh. And Nimai, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was generally known, before he accepted sannyas, he would sometimes, when he was in Navadvip, he would call out plaintively, Pundarika Bap, Pundarika Bap. Bapa means father. Bap. So devotees didn't know what they were, what is this? Why is he saying this? They thought maybe he was referring to Krishna as Pundarika. But actually he was referring to Pundarika Vidyanidhi, who at that time was living in Chattogram. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha and Pundarika Vidyanidhi is Vrishabhanu, her father in Krishna Lila. So Pundarik also had a house in Navadvip. He was very wealthy, and he appeared externally to be a materialistic enjoyer. So when he came to Navadvip, Mukunda Datta, who was also from the Chattogram area, he spoke something to Gadadha Pandit. Now Gadadha's father is also from Chattogram area, but Gadadha grew up in Navadvip, so he didn't know Pundarik at all. So Mukunda said to Gadadha, I know you're a great Vaishnava from birth, so one great Vaishnava has come, I'll take you to see him. Mukunda said to Gadadha. Gadadha was a strict brahmachari with no sense gratification. So he said, yes, I'll be very happy to see a Vaishnava. So he went with Mukunda, and he entered the house of Pundarika, and he saw that he's sitting on a nice bed with silk coverings and silk covered bolsters, himself wearing very elegant clothes with rings and jewelry, being fanned by a servant, and the fan with elaborate silver handle, himself jewelry and perfume and long hair with scented oil. He was chewing pan and spitting it into a silver spittoon. And Mukunda could understand that Gadadha was doubtful about him. Gadadha was coming very eagerly to see him, but then when he saw him, Mukunda could see on his face, on Gadadha's face, he thought, what kind of a Vaishnava is this? So Mukunda was well known as having a very sweet singing voice. So he recited one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Aho Bhakti. What is that? Aho Bhakti Stanakala Kuta. This describes how merciful is Krishna, that the demoness, Putana, the sister of Baka, she came to kill Krishna. But Krishna was so merciful that he gave her the position, Dhatyuchitam, the position suitable for a nurse, just like a mother. then who else but Krishna is merciful enough that we should take shelter in him? And hearing this, Pundarik went mad. Mad with ecstasy. You already said it. You're jumping ahead of me. Yeah. He's jumped up and he was shouting and pulling on his hair, and everything in the house became scattered. The bedding became all disrupted. He was rolling on the floor, and this went on and on for a long time. His servants couldn't restrain him. So then Gadadhar thought, I made a great offense. I thought he was a materialist, but actually he's a great devotee. So then later he expressed to Mukunda that I made a great offense in my mind, and you kindly saved me from that offense. So Gadadhar thought that he expressed to Mukunda that everyone should have a guru. Up to the present time I didn't accept a guru, so to nullify the offense I should offer my whole self to him as a disciple. So that was approved by Nimai Pandit. And when the Pundarik, after a few hours he calmed down, and when the proposition was put to him, he was very happy. He said, who would not be happy to have a disciple like this? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always treated him in the mood of father to child. There are other narrations of him also. When he was living in Puri, he was great friends with Sarup Damodar. One day they went to the temple of Jagannath together. Presumably they would go regularly together. That was the day of what's called Oran Shashti, where in the temple of Jagannath at Puri, new cloth is offered to Jagannath with the starch still in it. I think the Russian devotees might not understand this. It's a common thing up to the present day that when rice is boiled, the water has some starch in it. And then cloth is put in that starch water, and when it dries it becomes quite stiff and it looks quite nice. Do you have a such system in Russia? With potato starch maybe? Yeah. You're translating, yeah. So Pundarik, when he came back from the temple, he said, what are these people doing? According to Shastra, you're not supposed to offer starch cloth to the deity. And he said that, it's deshacha, it's done here, so you shouldn't criticize it. But Pundarik thought, what are these people? What are they? They don't know what they're doing. He was critical. So that night, in his dream, Jagannath and Baladev came and beat him. He said, you're criticizing our servants. We like to be dressed like that. They beat him up. So when he woke up in the morning, his face was all swollen. Adbhutam. It's amazing, wonderful. Adbhutamana Vishayam. Then I can speak something about Raghunath Das Goswami. All the 6 Goswamis, they had some special contribution to the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raghunath Das, he demonstrated the highest ideal. Service to the servants of Krishna's servants. So the greatest servant is Anaradhatitanunam. What is that? Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. The greatest servant is Radha. So he exhibited the pastimes of service to the servant of Radha, which is only alluded to even in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's only alluded to, means there's some mention, but it's not made so very clear. So he exhibited intense longing for attaining the service to Radha via her servants. And he wasn't living in this world. He lived at Radha Kunda, and even in the heat of the summer, it's hardly imaginable. Even in Bhimavaram, you can't imagine how hot it is in the summer there. It's hot here, very hot, but there it's even hotter. But he didn't know whether it's hot or cold. He'd be out in the sunshine, just absorbed in bhajan. So in the heat, a young girl came to shelter him with some cloth, by which he got chastised by, who is that, Rupa or Sanatan, that you're having Radha come to serve you. Then, because he had no shelter, he had no building. So then he never agreed to live in any cottage, but then he agreed, all right, I'll live in a cottage so that Radha won't come to serve me. Rupan Raghunath, this our sampradaya is often said to me, although it's Rupanuga sampradaya, followers of Rupa Goswami. Sometimes it's said to be Rupa Raghunath, sometimes Rup Raghunath Swarup. Rupa Raghunatha Padejar Ash Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Das. Almost every chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita finishes with this submission of the author to Rupa, at the lotus feet of Rupa and Raghunath. So his feelings are summarized. Well, he has this Stavavali with it's as the name indicates, it's a collection of prayers. Stavavali. Yeah, Stava, and then Stavavali means it's a collection, within which is his Vilapa Kusumanjali. Vilapa means lamentation, calling out in lamentation. Kusum means a particular kind of flower, and it's Anjali means offering. So within that he expresses his longings for the service of Radha. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had memorized this all. Although he rarely spoke about it, this was his own aspiration also. Sometimes in lectures it would burst out of him. And he would, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he advised great caution in approaching these subjects. But sometimes in lectures he would just burst out, he would say, now you all prepare yourselves to be maidservants of Radha. So I'll just recite one verse from that Vilap Kusumanjali, which indicates the Vilapa, the ecstatic lamentation of Raghunath Das, in which he's praying to Sri Radha. Tavaivasmi, najivami tvaivina, iti vigyaya devi tvam, naya mam charanantikam. He says twice, I am yours, I cannot live without you. Devi, goddess, knowing this, she addresses her as Devi, knowing this, you bring me and keep me at your lotus feet. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita there is some extensive description of how Raghunath Das, in his youth, he was living a very opulent and prestigious life, but with great difficulty, because his parents didn't want to let him go, he managed to escape to become a great mendicant in the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't deal with him directly, he put him under the care of Swarup Damodar. After the departure from this world of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many of his associates also departed, almost immediately, because they thought, what's the point of being alive even? So Raghunath Das, he thought, yes, I should also leave this world. But he thought, let me one time take darshan of Sri Vrindavan Dham and the lotus feet of Rupa and Sanatan who are living there. But when he reached there, they forbade him from leaving this world. And his memories, he would recite, one reason, they wanted to hear the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri from him, because Raghunath, had been a witness to so many of those pastimes. And later when Krishnadas Kaviraj was commissioned to write about the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri in detail, Raghunath Das Goswami became the major contributor to that. So by the mercy of Raghunath Das, we have some insights into the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri, especially in the mood which he expresses in Shikshashtaka, especially in the later verses, the last 3 verses. So Raghunath Das expresses the highest ideal possible of any religious undertaking. On Monday we're supposed to go to Kovur, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he discussed with Ramananda Rai. Yeah, that's generally referred to in Bengali as Ramananda Samvada. Do you have that word, Samvada? Yeah. So if you're going to speak about that, you could say Sambhashanam, or generally it's referred to as Samvada. There's nothing wrong with saying Sambhashanam, but Samvada. So that section of Chaitanya Charitamrita called Ramananda Samvada, that is understood to just in outline give the highest understanding of the highest level of religious understanding. Goes step by step, up and up. But even what was not expressed explicitly therein in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami has expressed. So if we neutrally examine, we will find that there is no higher expression of religious sentiment than that expressed by Raghunath Das. But actually, even if the religious scholars try to understand, they can't understand. Yesterday I quoted that Avang Manasa Gochara. The absolute truth is beyond the power of the mind and words to capture. So the aspiration that Raghunath Das has expressed is far, far above anything that anyone can begin to conceive of with their conditioned mind. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has expressed this in referring to Swarasaki Siddhi, which is a technical term, obviously, that refers to the particular perfection that a devotee has, that he or she likes to be like that in their service to Krishna. So Swarasaki Siddhi Brajagopi Dhan Parama Chanchala Sati. Then Nirvishesha Gyan Jogir Adhyan Ekane Na Paistiti. He says that this Swarasaki Siddhi is the treasure of the gopis of Vrindavan. It is Parama Chanchala, or supremely unfixed, and Sati, and also extremely chaste. The meditation of the yogis, the greatest mental efforts, and Nirvishesha Jnana, the knowledge that tends towards an impersonal understanding. Impersonal, it has no place here. So we find in this area, Bhimavaram, there are many people from the older generation who have read many religious things, who are very pious in many ways. They're all contaminated by Mayavad speculations. In this way they're unfortunate. They can never begin to approach or understand what the Gauriyas have come to give, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. As long as one remains attached to the impersonal understanding, then the great ocean of nectar, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the nectar of Bhakti Rasa, one cannot enter into it. Or even if one enters into it, well, one will think that it's impersonal. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we'll finish there, and thank you all for coming. to glorify Jagannath in this town of Bhimavaram. We can remember Bhima in this town very well, although it's not named after the Bhima of the Pandavas. Although the Bhima it's named after was named after the Bhima of the Pandavas. The Bhima who it's named after was named after the Bhima of the Pandavas. So he certainly was full of feeling. He's known to be a very, his very name means that he's a very severe kind of person. But that intense feeling is for Krishna. And he came again as Madhvacharya, just as he fought with the demons as Bhima, he again fought with the Mayavad as Madhva. In this way, he cleared the way for the pure love of Godhead that was to be preached by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I can advise the devotees, it'll be quite hot. You've been going out in the hot sun. It's a good idea, especially those of you who have shaved heads, to put a turban or a hat, cover your head, don't get sunstroke. And men are especially invited to wear dhotis, and the ladies are invited to wear saris. Some of the Russian ladies, I noticed they're wearing what they call gopi skirts, but actually Prabhupada didn't like these. In this part of India, that's worn by young girls, very young girls, not by young. Well, actually what they wear here is different. That's more like Rajasthani style, what our Western Matajis wear. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.